Well, thank you for coming back again. We're so thrilled to welcome our next panel, Clinical Applications of AI in Oncology, with Jan-Jakob Sonke. He's professor at the University of Amsterdam, and Jeroen Maas, our challenge lead health at Smart Health Amsterdam. And I also want to take this opportunity to say thanks to the speakers and to you, the audience, and of course to Vidya and Fiona, who've all been organizing this backstage. I will also be passing the chairing role over to my dear colleague Jeroen, also from the Smart Health Amsterdam program. And I want to invite you all to join our platform at smarthealthamsterdam.com. You can join our community, and maybe we see you all when possible in real life, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Femke. Really happy to be here. As Femke said, my name is Jeroen Maas, and I work for the Amsterdam Economic Board and for Smart Health Amsterdam on improving health through meaningful artificial intelligence. We were here on a panel, but unfortunately, one of the panelists, Clarissa Sanchez, had a little accident at home, and they had to go to the emergency care. So this will be more like a fireside chat with Jan-Jakob Sonke. Really happy that you're here, Jan-Jakob, professor at the University of Amsterdam and theme leader image-guided therapy at the Netherlands Cancer Institute. But before we start, I'd like to take the opportunity to provide a little context. You know about Amsterdam Health. You've seen the video probably 3 times if you've been watching the whole afternoon. Smart Health is, say, part of Amsterdam AI Technology for People. That is a large collaboration with 2 universities, 2 university medical centers, 3 independent research institutes, the Municipality of Amsterdam and the Amsterdam Economic Board. And we have writes up about what we do. I'll get it to you. You'll find me in the chats later. But we also pledged more to do even more than we do already. So what do we want to do more? We have reserved 1 billion euros for the next 10 years to be invested in artificial intelligence, just with that consortium that we just had. We aim to have at least 800 more researchers in artificial intelligence, train 5,000 students, have 10,000 students following an AI minor, and to help at least 100 AI spin-offs and startups. And that's in Amsterdam AI Technology for People as a whole. Now, the Netherlands Cancer Institute, and Jan-Jakob Sonke is working there, is one of the institutes that participates in this consortium. And Jan-Jakob, well, like we said, it is a bit different, but could you please first give a small introduction, a brief introduction about what you do at the Cancer Institute already in terms of applying artificial intelligence in clinical care?
Yes, I would like to do this very much. Thank you for the invitation. This Amsterdam AI for People is a very exciting collaboration within Amsterdam. Just to give you a flavor of what the Netherlands Cancer Institute is, it's the only comprehensive cancer center in the Netherlands, which combines then cutting-edge oncological research on the one hand and state-of-the-art cancer therapy on the other hand. And we try to bridge and synergy and keep the flow of information from research to clinic and back flowing. My personal interest lies in adaptive radiotherapy, where we try to adapt the therapy of radiation, where we eradicate cancer with high energy X-rays to the anatomical variations and biological variations of the patient. And the Netherlands Cancer Institute, as I guess alluded to already, has a strong focus on translational research, on translating innovations, whether they're biological or technological, to the clinic to benefit our patients and contribute to find a cure for every cancer. Just to give you a flavor of where AI already finds its place in oncological care, I guess the first example I would like to share with you is multivariate toxicity modeling. Part of cancer therapy is always finding a balance between maximizing cure but minimizing side effects. And predicting side effects of therapy, whether it's chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or other therapies, is very important to find this optimal balance. And because many patients have additional risk factors, to come up with a good model to predict these side effects is challenging, and machine learning models help us to find the optimal predictions for individual patients. And this helps us, on the one hand, to optimize therapy for an individual patient, and the other hand, also to come up with this shared decision-making process where the doctors, together with the patient, decide on what this optimal balance for that particular patient is, whether he's willing to live with the consequences of therapy, whatever it is, for maximizing cure, or focuses on quality of life and is willing to live shorter with it. Moving forward to this therapy planning, in the past, if with an example of radiotherapy, creating a plan that would instruct the machine to deliver high energy X-rays to a patient would be a highly manual process. Subsequently, this has been innovated by iterative processes, classical machine optimization strategies, but it still meant that a doctor had to interrogate the system very extensively for half an hour to up to an hour or longer to find the optimal parameter set in combination with more technically skilled people. And with machine learning techniques, we've come up with strategies to actually optimize the plan completely automatic. So this streamlines the process rapidly and also allows us to more frequently adapt the plan when the patient's anatomy changes. It also allows us to, with machine learning strategies, to do automatic quality assurance. X-rays are potentially dangerous. It's a dangerous agent, so we have to be very careful that our plans are good, optimal, and safe. And by using machine learning algorithms to validate that the plans that we make are within the expected distribution, giving the anatomy of that patient mimicking patients that we've seen before, we can make sure that the automated planning also validates our rules that we set out for QA. And moving on to predicting therapy, we've developed based on radiomics, which is extracting features from tumors, many features sort of mimicking classical genomics, but then from an imaging feature perspective, and then using classifiers and learning algorithms to find the relevant features that are associated with patient-specific response. We've seen very good performance in these models with area under the curves of 0.8 and above, and currently we're developing clinical trials where we can prospectively start to validate these prediction models. Moving forward to more advanced AI from a deep learning perspective, where we've gradually moved from into automatic segmentation of the anatomy of the patient in order to optimize therapy, traditionally done manually, subsequently adopted algorithms based on atlases of previous patients, and now commissioning algorithms that do this automatically using deep learning algorithms to increase the quality of the automatic segmentations, requiring less manual adjustments for perfect registrations. Similar techniques are then also used for anomaly detection when, similar to the plan QA, we can also do delineation QA using machine learning algorithms. And the last example that our radiologists are very happy with is automatic pulmonary embolism detection. Pulmonary embolisms are potentially life-threatening. Cancer is increasing the risk of pulmonary embolisms, but radiologists are often confronted with a high workload and a lot of scans they have to read for response, for diagnosis, etc. When they find the pulmonary embolism on their backlog of scans to read a few days after they've been made, they always feel guilty that they haven't seen that scan earlier. So now we use automatic pulmonary embolism detection as a workload and workflow enhancer, that these scans are prioritized in the list of the radiologists to look at in order to be sure that these potentially life-threatening side effects can be catched early and treated before they become life-threatening. As I guess from these examples, it was shown that we gradually move from sort of classical machine learning to deep learning technology in order to improve both our workflow as the quality of our care. But I'm also convinced that we're still at the brink of the exciting novel AI applications, and that if Jeroen would invite me in 5 years' time, he would have to give me a 1 hour time slot to just give you a few examples of what has been realized in the clinic.
That would be my last question. What would you like to see applied in practice, in clinical practice, within another 5 years? But before we go there, the examples you mentioned from using AI for optimizing therapy for a single patient, to discuss treatment plans with the patient. You said you could even use it to predict the efficacy of a treatment. Are you using all these examples right now within the clinic on a routine basis already?
Yeah, so the examples, and this is how we originally set up this discussion, that I would discuss what we're already doing, not necessarily large scale and broadly implemented, right? So I was alluding to something where we're setting up clinical trials to prospectively validate instead of just having it in routine care. But these are implemented in the clinic as we go. And then I would elegantly give the word to Clarissa, where she could then discuss potential future applications. So, but I've prepared to do the same on her behalf.
Yeah. So for you, what is the most exciting thing that you'll be working on with Clarissa? And maybe we should give a little bit of background. Like, you're working for the Netherlands Cancer Institute, which has a connected hospital, the Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. And Clarissa is coming from the data sciences at the University of Amsterdam. So that is like a clinical data science collaboration. What's the most exciting thing for you, for your daily practice in 5 years, that you will be working on with Clarissa?
Well, to just sketch that collaboration a little bit further. So Clarissa and I took the initiative to actually start a collaborative lab where we want to innovate novel AI applications in the context of oncology. And the Netherlands has a very interesting platform called ICAI, Innovation Center for Artificial Intelligence, which are either public and public combinations or public-private partnerships, where within a given domain, people work on innovative AI approaches to solve problems that haven't been solved so far. And Clarissa is recently appointed as Professor of AI in Health. I have a strong interest in AI for image-guided therapies, and we decided to join forces and to create an ICAI lab where we really believe that with high-end AI, with all the talents that are taught and coached and emerged from the UVA AI labs and our oncological focus, with our data and our own AI developments, we can really bring AI for oncology further. If you think, there's a few very exciting examples that I could think of. One that I already have recruited a student is MRI acceleration. MRI is an imaging modality that provides us with really detailed images of the patient's anatomy, but it takes a long time to acquire. There's traditional methods to try to accelerate this, but they have reached their limits. And we believe that with AI, we can create inverse problem solvers that with very limited measurements of the raw data can still provide us with a very detailed representation of the anatomy. This, on the one hand, would allow us to just accelerate and make MR cheaper, and therefore we would use them more often in the balance between cost and cost effectiveness. But on the other hand, also really open up novel applications where my MRI is used in real time to guide therapy to the highest precision that we can imagine. Other examples are, for instance, breast cancer. Breast cancer is in women the highest incidence cancer that occurs. In the Netherlands, we have a screening program which is cost effective, proven in trials where all women, I think about 50, got X-rays to screen for breast cancer. And as a consequence, we also detect very early stages of breast cancer, which are generally treated with surgery and or a combination of radiotherapy and chemotherapy, which is then also quite a burden on the patient's quality of life. And in fact, we know that quite a few of those patients are overtreated. We know that that many of those cancers, these early cancers, will not actually develop in life-threatening situations. However, at this stage, we don't have biomarkers that accurately predict which patients will and will not develop invasive breast cancer, which is life-threatening. And we believe that with the vast amount of data and the novel algorithms to actually extract these informations, that we will find biomarkers in a combination of detailed pathology information, detailed X-rays, CTs and MRIs, and potentially genetic information.
Wow, that sounds very promising. And you say we have vast amounts of data. Are you talking about the data then at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, or do you also use data from other institutions? Is there a database you can tap into?
Well, that's a good point. So breast cancer happens to be the biggest patient cohort that we treat at the Netherlands Cancer Institute. We have a long track record and we have a national position in treating breast cancer. So there we have lots of data, but still, in order to know if there's biases in your data set, external validation is always key in order to move this into the clinic. And this is a hurdle that is still very challenging to actually being able to tap into high quality data from different institutions that might have a slightly different profile, have been slightly different treated, and to see if your models are still robust. And I think this is also one of the exciting elements in Amsterdam, that we actually have this collaborative spirit and starting to think, build, and design methods to combine data for one, to have bigger training sets, but also to have independent validation sets.
Yeah. And you mentioned when you build an algorithm, you need to test that on different sets to see if it's still robust enough to be applied there. But it sounds like a long road to scaling, because I can imagine if you develop an algorithm and you think this really helps predict a better patient outcome, or in whatever clinical process, you'd like to have that scale up almost immediately. But apart from testing that on another population, do you see other hindrances or things that make it easier to scale such a service?
Well, I think if it's really a biomarker that you would use to decide whether a patient is treated or not, these have to be prospectively validated in clinical trials, where you actually demonstrate efficacy not only in retrospectively or prospectively gather data, but actually show it's not just prognostic but also predictive. And this is a long-lasting effort, which also becomes more expensive. Right? I mean, prospective trials are always expensive in terms of insurance, in terms of data management, etc. So there's I don't think there's a quick win in terms of prospective validation, but I think there are quick wins to generate in terms of data sharing and independent validation. Yeah.
Do they include working together with commercial parties, in your opinion?
Ultimately, yes. Ultimately, right, I'm not on the earth for business. Right? I can generalize these algorithms within institutions in collaborations, but I'm not the person that will bring this across the globe. And this way, to have genuine impact, and not just in Amsterdam, but across the globe, these type of biomarkers, these type of data, and these algorithms then have to be become a medical device, in the sense that you're allowed to use them in a medical context for decision making, and it's only commercial companies that can realize this.
Yeah, I think we totally agree there. But I was also alluding to using data from commercial companies. Is that a possibility for you, or is that still hard to get to?
Good question. I would assume that it's harder for commercial companies to get data than for academic partners to collaborate.
Yeah.
So that's somewhat different, I guess, in healthcare, where, especially in the Netherlands, large-scale medical data is always within the boundaries of the hospital and not so much owned by commercial entities. So in the Netherlands, where we're looking for data sharing, where we're still discussing whether it should be federated or centralized, I think this will always be gathered in non-commercial legal entities without trying to make a profit. Yeah.
I think that's also one of the things that AI technology for people really focuses on. When we were talking with Clarissa, she also mentioned, even when applying tested and clinically validated algorithms in clinical practice, we still have to look at the ethical aspects of it. What do you do with the algorithm? Who has the authority to decide? Is that the algorithm, the doctor, the patient? How do you work together? Do you come across those more ethical issues in your daily job?
Not in my daily job as a researcher, but as in my daily job as an ambassador for image guidance, these come across where there's various elements, right? The aspect of using patients' data for research and make sure that you comply with all the privacy rules, but also inform the patients of the results of your research that they contributed to. It becomes, I guess, a different element, whether it's a supervised or an unsupervised algorithm. As long as it's a supervised algorithm where the algorithm advises a doctor to do something, I'm not sure if there's whether the algorithm has a lot of ethical considerations apart from sort of the potential biases that are involved. And I was just being able to listen to the previous speaker for 5 minutes before I was instructed to come to the back room. There's concerns there that, is the data that we have sufficiently representative for minorities or those things? And how do you validate that these biases are correct and that these predictions are valid for everybody in the same way? When we move to unsupervised algorithms, where ultimately we have the self-driving car equivalent of therapy intervention machines, where a robot would autonomously operate you to remove your prostate or remove a tumor, then the same questions about responsibilities of when this device makes an error and whether we feel comfortable with a robot, even if on average this device is more precise as a human, come to mind. But unfortunately, I would almost say these self-driving interventional machines are somewhat further into the future.
Okay, and I think that I want to go on, but I look at the time. It's we're at the end of this session, but I think that might be a nice bridge to the next speaker. For now, Jan-Jakob, thank you very much for your contribution and explaining what you do with artificial intelligence in the clinical oncology practice already and where you're going to. I hope we'll be back in a few years and you can have that hour to further talk about it.
Thanks, Matt. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. For now, Jan-Jakob will be available in a Q&A session. That will be dropped. The link to that Q&A session will be dropped in the Hop-in chat. I will be back after a quick break. Do some networking, post something in the app, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.